but I will go ahead and let her introduce herself to anyone that is new.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rima Lyons-Spite, the co-coordinator for RJ.
Thank you, Rima. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping items. Presented now is an overview of what we'll be going over today in our presentation. We'll begin with CJC updates as a whole, then we'll move into how to use the new 2025-27 expense tracker for quarterly reporting, as well as how to submit an adjustment request. During this presentation, we ask that you stay on mute. However, the chat function will remain open and you'll be able to drop your questions in as we go. We'll try to keep up with those questions as we go along, but we have allocated time at the end for a Q&A, and where we'll be able to answer any of those questions in the chat, and then you'll also be able to raise your hands and unmute. But with that, let's go ahead and move on to CJC updates. Our main update today is that the CJC has updated its grant administration guide, and the new version is now available on the CJC website, as well as the link that's included in this slide. The updates to the GAG do include changes to staff approval of budget adjustments, closeout processes, and updated federal requirement section. One quick moment, Rima. When you spoke earlier, I could not hear you, and I just want to make sure I have my sound okay in case anyone.
Can you hear me now? I
Talk one
see,
more time.
I see people nodding. Can you hear me, Amani?
I can hear you, Rima, and I can hear Amani, but it's kind of looking like maybe Amani can't hear.
I cannot hear.
Uh-oh.
I'm gonna go through, but you guys may have to chat with me to the chat until you start your part and I get that figured out.
All right, we can do that. Happy Monday, everyone.
Okay, perfect. So for the 25-27 biennium, we have a new and improved expense tracker form. This form will be the standard across all of our grant programs, and it just allows for all of the expenditures and your budget adjustments to be tracked within one place. An important change to note is that you, the grantee, will be the custodian of this document. If you're wondering where to find this document, the primary contact for your program should have received it in an email from Avery, so you'll want to get in touch with whoever's listed as your primary contact for your program if you don't currently have it. With this change, your responsibility will be to maintain a local copy and then to upload that copy for each quarterly reporting period. On this slide, we included a high-level overview of what this document will look like when you first open it. As you can see, there are 4 tabs located across the bottom. We have the expense tracker, the budget adjustment tab, the example budget adjustment, and CJC admin detail sheet. And then we will go into more details in this presentation, including examples of what those may look like for various programs. Tab 1 of the expense sheet is labeled Expense Tracker. We'll have an example of what that looks like on the next slide. But with each submission, staff will review your expenditures and any changes that have been made to that form for each quarter. An important thing to note is that we do want to see this document from you, even if you've spent $0 during the identified quarter that you're reporting on, you're still going to want to upload that tracker. If you do need to input expenditures for quarters that you previously reported on, then you're going to need to contact Rima, Avery, or myself. And then after budget adjustment requests are reviewed and approved by CJC staff, then changes to the locked cells within this tab will be made. With that, let's go ahead and take a look at what this tab is going to look like in practice. So here we have a closer look at what tab 1 in the expense tracker is going to look like. At the top, you can see that we've included directions for you to use as a reference while you are entering those expenses in, just in case you need a refresher on what the expectations are. And then below those directions in the bottom tan section, you can see the line items for your approved budget are already going to be entered for you. Those entries include the line item names, any associated information, and the total award amounts for each line item. Your responsibility on this tab is going to be to enter those expenditures for each quarter and the white columns that you see on the right side of the slide. In this specific example, this grantee would be reporting in that first column that you see there, that's called out by that red arrow for the total spent for Q1. So their responsibility would be to enter the expenditures that they've already accrued for the quarter that they're reporting on in that first column. The expense trackers you've received do include some built-in equations that are going to be helpful when you're monitoring your program. This slide includes examples of what those equations are going to do for you. On the far right side, that's labeled column R, it shows how the expense sheet tracks total remaining funds by budget category as those expenditures are entered. And then below that, labeled row 182 is going to track expenditures by quarter. And then lastly, on the bottom of that, labeled row 186 through 193 is going to have equations that track your total expenditures by budget category. So these equations are meant to be helpful tools to both grantees and CJC staff. So to ensure they continue to be useful, please do not edit any of the formulas. We rely on this document for other purposes, so we ask that you do not edit any of the locked cells, and instead, just please contact staff if you do need assistance when making any corrections to any locked cells that need to be edited. With that, that completes the examples for tab 1. So next we'll move on to what to expect with tab 2 in the expense tracker.
Shh, shh, shh.
Okay. Tab 2 is going to be used for budget adjustments. First, I'll go over a few things to keep in mind about the budget adjustment tab, and then I will go through an example of what it will look like, much like what we just did with tab 1. So currently in the expenditure tracking sheet you have, there's one budget adjustment tab. The first time you submit a budget adjustment request, you're going to use that tab. After the budget adjustment is reviewed, CJC staff will add a new blank copy of the tab, and you'll use the blank copy to submit your budget adjustment request in the following quarter. That process will happen each time, so you're always going to want to look for a blank copy of that tab to enter any new budget adjustment requests. And then budget line items are going to be pulled over by staff from your approved budget on the expense tracker tab. So that means that you can complete a budget adjustment at the line item level without having to enter that information on those currently approved line items yourself. And then when you do make an adjustment request, you're going to want to make sure you include all of the information requested because we can't process your adjustment request if that's incomplete. So just make sure it's completed in detail. If you're a returning grantee that received funds in the 2023-25 biennium, then you're probably familiar with submitting your budget adjustment request by completing the form in SM Apply. Completing the SM Apply form is still going to apply and be a step in this process, but REMA will provide instructions on how to complete the required SM Apply form later on in this presentation. Something that's new in this biennium is that CJC staff can approve all budget adjustment except program changes. So program changes or changes that substantially alter the services you are contracted to provide do still need to be approved by the commission. However, budget adjustment requests that do not include a program change can be processed internally by staff. What that means is that most budget adjustment requests can be processed fairly quickly. Once submitted, CJC staff will review your budget adjustment request and reach out to you if any more information is needed. And when a budget adjustment request is approved by CJC staff, we'll go in and update your approved budget on your expense tracker tab and then send the updated expense tracker spreadsheet back to you. So let's take a closer look at the form itself. The general format of this tab is similar to the expense tracker tab. At the top, you're going to see those instructions on how to use the form included. And then in the top right-hand side, directly below the information about your contract, you're going to see your approved line items, which are pulled over from that expense tracker tab and cannot be edited. The cells containing your line items are again colored in tan, so you can tell at a glance that those cells are going to be locked. All changes to your budget must be completed at the line item level, and columns G through O must be completed for each line item that you're requesting to change. Okay, so first you're going to select the line item you would like to either add funds to or remove funds from. Column G is going to have a drop down for you with a menu where you'll select the type of action that you're requesting. In this particular example, the grantee is requesting to remove 4,000 from the program manager position, and that's shown here as position 1. And then they're going to add 2,000 each to 2 line items that are already existing in the approved budget. Please note that if you're adding a new line item that does not exist in your approved budget, then you're going to want to select a blank row under the budget category that you're adding that line item to, and then you're going to fill in the requested information in that blank row. On this slide in column H, you can see that there's $4,000 that's being moved from the program manager. And then of that $4,000, the grantee is requesting to move $2,000 for the second position that's named on here as the RJ program facilitator. And that's being supported by the description that you can see in column I. And then you'll note that even in this relatively simple example, it's still very important to indicate both which line item you're moving funds from and which line item you're moving funds to, because tracking that movement allows CJC staff to accurately track any budget changes and help us to ensure that all funds are accounted for. Column M is going to be where you'll provide the reason your program is requesting the changes in funding. You're going to want to make sure you're providing a detailed explanation so that CJC staff have a good idea of what is needed for approval and to avoid any delay with us needing to reach out to you for further clarification. And then columns G and M cannot be blanked or marked as not applicable on this form. So we do have a little more information on tab 2, and then we'll discuss the other tabs as well as SM Apply. However, at this time, I'll go ahead and pass it on to Rima, who will go over the remaining information.
You're muted, Rima.
Thank you. Sorry about that. So thank you, Amani, for walking us through the form up to here. Columns N and O are to be completed if you are requesting a new line item. As you can see in this example, NA or not applicable has been entered for the first line item in the request because that line item already exists in the approved budget. Client housing support, however, is a new line item, so columns N and O have been completed. We need that information in columns N and O so that if approved, the new line item can be added to the approved budget. So we're anticipating that many of you may have program changes this quarter as you adjust your budget based on the amount of funding you were awarded. So here's an example of a budget adjustment request that could be a program change. This grantee is requesting to remove $20,000 that were supposed to be used to contract with a research entity to complete an evaluation of the program. With this change, no funds would be left in this line item, and the funds being moved to pay for client housing costs, which are a new line item. There's no other housing-related costs in the currently approved budget. Because this constitutes a completely new program area for the grantee, it may be a substantial enough change to be considered a program change and need review by the commission. This is going to depend, of course, on your specific program and the change you are requesting. Some other examples that may be program changes are adding new personnel positions, adding line items into a budget category that didn't have funding previously, or adding new program components that will change the direction of the program. So in addition to checking all new line items against the allowable expenditures list in CJC's grant administration guide, it's a good practice to always check the changes you're requesting against the project description in your contract as well. If the change you are requesting alters your program enough that the description of your project in your contract also needs to get updated, it's most likely a program change. It will also need to be reviewed by the commission and may even require additional steps. So if you find yourself in that situation, definitely reach out to CJC. Tab 3 and 4 of your expense tracker are for your reference. So tab 3 of your expense tracker includes an example budget adjustment form. If you're completing a request and have questions that aren't covered in that example, again, please feel free to reach out to us. Tab 4 includes some additional information that staff use to track your expenditures internally. You're welcome to look at it, see what we're tracking, but you won't be able to make changes to that tab. So next up, we'll go over how to submit your expense sheets and budget modifications in SM Apply. Hopefully, even though there will be some new components to this, you'll be a little bit more familiar since you have been using SM Apply in previous biennium. Or Amani mentioned earlier, filling out the budget adjustment tab is step 1 in a 2-step process when it comes to requesting those budget adjustments. The second step is to submit a budget adjustment request form in SM Apply. Both of these steps must be completed in order for your request to be considered. When you log in to submit your report or adjustment request, your SM Apply screen will look similar to this. As you can see, the expenditure report is a required task and the adjustment request is optional. It's important to note that we're not asking you to submit program data this quarter, so there will be no tasks related to submitting program data when you log in the first time, though there will be in the next quarter. We're anticipating that most programs will not have had the opportunity to provide services during this first quarter from January 1st to March 31st due to the award and contracting timeline. If you did have clients during this time period, please hold on to that data. You'll be asked to submit it later on. To complete each task, click on the task and complete the required prompts and uploads, which we'll talk about more in detail momentarily. If you look on the left-hand side of the screen, you can see that there is a bar at the top that states 0 of 2 required tasks are complete. That section of the screen will update based on how many required tasks you have for the quarter. It's a good idea to check this bar periodically to make sure you have completed all of your required tasks. So once you've clicked on your expenditure report task, you will see this SM Apply form where you will upload your expense tracker sheet. Below the upload prompt, there is an attestation and a place for your signature. You'll be required to sign this form in order to submit your expense tracker. If you're submitting an adjustment request, go back to the main application screen and click on the adjustment request task. The adjustment request form has 2 questions for you to respond yes or no to. The first question asks whether you are making a programmatic change. Please check yes to this question if you're making one of those substantial changes we talked about previously. Once you click yes, a narrative question will open asking which approved component will be impacted by the request, whether you're asking to add, remove, or make other substantive changes to an approved component of your program, and then the reason for the change. In this narrative response, please provide a brief but specific response to each of those bulleted prompts. The answer you provide here should reflect the overarching reason you're requesting the program change, rather than just copying and pasting those individual reasons you provided on the budget adjustment tab of your expense tracker for each line item. As noted in the final bullet point, you will also need to complete the second part of this form, which we'll go ahead and look at now. So the second question asks if you are requesting to change your approved budget. Clicking yes to this question will open up a branching question that will ask you to acknowledge supplanting regulations and acknowledge that you've completed the budget adjustment tab in your expense tracker. Again, in order to have your request considered, both acknowledgements must be checked. Finally, once you've uploaded your expense sheet, completed your adjustment requests, and signed and answered any additional prompts, then you're ready to submit your quarterly report for this quarter. When you look at the left side of your screen now, the required taskbar is blue, indicating you've completed all of your required tasks. There should also be a green circle with a check mark next to each of the individual tasks in your task list. If they are gray or half full, that means something was not completed and you want to go back into that task and double check what's missing. Once you've confirmed everything is ready to go, you can click on the green submit button and you are all done. So we've set aside a few minutes for questions. If you have any questions, like Amani said, please raise your hand. You can ask them verbally or go ahead and drop it in the chat and we'll read it out. It looks like Miles, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. So for each quarter, specific changes to the budget will need to be made, or can we so for my program, we need to make just a large move from one line to another,
Yep.
but that would cover, if we did that in one swoop, it would not need to be done in the next month. So can we do that, or does it have to be done quarterly?
No, you can go ahead and make those large budget changes. You're just submitting it as part of your first quarterly report. So the budget adjustment request associated with it just needs to be completed this quarter when you're initially making that change. Then after it's approved, you can just move forward with, reporting your expenditures.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a quick question. This is Talia.
Hi, Talia.
Hi. And this may be, I just need to speak to one of you because it's pretty specific to ours. So part of ours was to hire someone. And obviously we didn't do that until we knew for sure that we were going to have those funds. So, knowing we don't even have the full 2 years. So if we were to change that where it was just paying for a staff we already have, going from hiring a new one to paying a staff, to me, that's not changing the program. That would just be a simple change, right? Not like a whole program change, correct?
I would say most likely not. Again, it's going to depend on the specific situation, but if the responsibilities the person is providing aren't changing, like the person you would have hired versus the person that's now doing them, the responsibilities, the services that are being provided are
Right.
basically the same, and you're just shifting it to a different position, it probably is not a programmatic change. But again, that'll depend on how big of a change that actually is.
Okay. And then, so a lot of these I can go back, I can go back and put, like rent and things of that nature, we can go back and say that we spent that because we did, right? In July. And, okay, so we can do that knowing that maybe some of our, like if I do decide to hire someone temporarily, I may not have spent for those like 6 months. Is
Yeah.
that a problem? That's okay. I'm just making sure it's kind of a puzzle right now and how I'm going to put it together.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, these are great questions,
Oh.
and I think many people might be in similar situations. You are allowed to report expenditures and claim expenditures back to whatever that project start date is listed in your contract. So just, let us know if what you're seeing in your spreadsheet, in your expenditure tracker is off compared to what you actually expended. But you can do that. And again, we're anticipating a lot of questions around this in the first quarter as we iron everything out. If you think you have a program change, but you're not sure, you can reach out to us, or you can go ahead and check that program change box. It's better to fill that out and alert us there might be a program change. And then if there isn't one, we can just process it faster than the other way around.
Okay.
Because those program
Okay.
changes do require that additional level of scrutiny, that having to be reviewed by the commission. So that's one reason why we really want to know that as quickly as possible so we can get on the agenda. So if you check it and it doesn't turn out to be a program change, no harm done. Versus the
Okay.
other way, if we have to go back and ask for more information because we think it's a program change, that might delay things a little bit. So
That's helpful. Thank you.
you're welcome. Looks like there's another hand up. And I can't see a name associated with it, so I apologize.
I believe it's Andrea.
Andrea, okay, go ahead, Andrea. Oh, I think you're on mute still.
Okay, how about no, you can't hear me?
Oh, I can hear you now.
Okay, I'm not sure what's going on. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I've started to make adjustments on the budget, and one thing I was noticing is there's nowhere where I can see, so if I've added funds or removed funds, I'm not able to see like an updated cell that shows the new total. And I'm a little bit,
Oh, you're kind of cutting in and out.
okay, let me try a different
Yeah,
setup
sorry
here.
about that.
Okay, let me try this. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, yeah.
Okay. Because I have some changes in a lot of fields and I'm adding and removing funds, what I was finding that the adjustment sheet doesn't have like a cell or a column where it shows what the new total should be based on what I'm adding or subtracting. So I'm of course have my own spreadsheet where everything's balanced, and I'm trying to use your sheet to make the changes and show you what I want to do. I feel like I need to send you my sheet along with it so you have like this cross check to make sure that how the numbers are entered on your end once it's changed match what I want, what I intend it to be. I was wondering, is it possible at this point for your sheet to be added like a column that is basically adding or subtracting whatever we're writing in that remove or add field?
So at this point in time, this form is standard across all grant programs, and that budget adjustment tab is really just for your request. So we are not making changes to it at this time. We'll go through line item by line item and check it against your approved budget to make sure it balances out.
Yeah.
So we'll make sure that balances out when we do the approval and move the information over to your approved budget tab. So don't worry about that. If you need additional docs for your tracking, that's perfectly fine. But that is also why we ask you to really identify line item by line item, whether or not you're adding or removing funds to show the complete tracking of funds so we can follow that trail.
Yeah, like in my situation, it's for a few of them, it's going to be a combination of a little funding from one, a little funding from another. And so I'm noting those areas it's coming from, but I'm not doing it down to the dollar because I know overall it does balance out. So I'm thinking I will touch base with you right after this and
Yeah.
to get more specifics, but I'm happy to provide an additional spreadsheet that just shows you the whole picture. Because I totally understand the spreadsheet, why it's necessary, but it is really hard to kind of see the bigger picture sometimes in that budget adjustment piece because there's so many moving parts to it. So,
Yep. Feel free to
yeah,
reach out. Yeah.
yeah, if other people are in the same boat, I mean, I'm just wondering, is it okay for us to send like a supplemental spreadsheet along with our changes, just to kind of help you out?
Again, I would advise you to reach out beforehand. We should be able to track it if you're providing enough detail at the line item level. And again, this is standard across all programs, and we haven't run into this issue before. So please just reach out if you're running into that issue.
Okay.
I do just want to hop in as well and say, if it's helpful, we may be able to set up a little meeting and have you share your screen and kind of go through the document. It sounds like there may be some opportunity for some TA to where maybe you're focusing on one line item and removing the funds and putting it into the spot that you're needing to put it, and then focusing on the next line item, removing those funds and putting them in each of the categories that you're needing to move them. So it's more in like an order. But I don't know. I would need to see your exact situation. But at this time, we're going to say no, thank you on the additional documents, just because that would just kind of extend the process on having to review a ton of additional documents from each grantee. But we definitely can set up a meeting and just kind of get it figured out so that it's not too hard on you, too much of a pull on you, and we can figure out what works.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I spent about 25 hours on this spreadsheet last week, just to give you an example of the kind of time that this sheet took. So I think it just has to do with trying to translate, right, a language that you need it in compared to what our budget as a community-based organization is built on, like 10 different sources of funding and the shift in the timelines and deadlines.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons for that. So I just wanted to provide it as an option if it's helpful to have that translator tool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
no,
thank you for that. It's super helpful to be able to get that information. So then in the future, if we are trying to make improvements, we can take that into account. Right now, just because it's so standard and it's gone out to so many programs, we're not able to make that change in the moment. But it's that we're definitely not pushing it aside, and we do want to hear from you and kind of get that figured out. So in the future, it's not taking you 25 hours and causing all of that extra time on you. We understand that you have work to do. So we do appreciate the feedback.
it looks like there was another question. Miles, is your hand up again?
Yeah, I just had another quick one. The optional uh budget adjustment period on April 1st, how long will that be open?
It'll be open the same amount of time that we usually have our quarterly reports open. So the report opens April 1st and will close April 25th.
Okay, and then so I'll have from the 1st to the 25th to submit the budget adjustment.
Yep,
Okay.
thank you. And there was a question in the chat too, and I'm going to go ahead and read it just in case anyone missed it. So the question was, it sounds like if we request adjustments and they are approved, CJC staff will send us an updated spreadsheet with the new balances for line item totals that were adjusted. And that is absolutely correct.
I have one more question.
Sure.
And it's, so in the original email, when we got the expense tracker, so I recognize that to change right now, it's just about, do we need to make any changes with our budget or possible program changes? But our first actual, like submission for like the actual expenses that are happening and including data, is that not until July?
Correct. So we're going
Right?
to
Okay.
we're going to look at the client data, the program data starting in July. Like I said in the presentation, if you did have clients during that period, you know, definitely keep that information, track it so we have that data, and you'll be able to submit it. It's just we wanted to focus on the budget changes this quarter because we again thought that there would be you know, kind of a lot, and we wanted to make sure you guys weren't overburdened with too much reporting this quarter.
I appreciate it. I'm just trying to make sure I'm getting dates right, needing to say it out loud. Thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
You're welcome. And when the quarterly reporting period opens, so April 1st or even before April 1st, you'll still get that standard email from Avery that has the specific instructions, the due dates and all of that. So keep an eye out for that as well. Okay, do we have any other questions at this time? I'm not seeing any other hands up. So we're gonna go ahead and close the Q&A period. Here are our emails. And again, please reach out if you have any additional questions, if you run into any challenges completing this quarter. We're always available to help.
I just want to also say, I know I'm new. I'm really excited to work with everyone. Don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm so glad I still have Rima with all of her historical knowledge. But I'm here. Feel free to email me. And I'm excited to work with everyone.
Well, have a great week, everybody. I guess we'll go ahead and close out this webinar.